Alex, motioning for Albrek to take a seat. "I am sure Hamar told you how he's the oldest son of our father's first wife," said Albrek. "How only the oldest son can be the true heir and all that nonsense." "We did go over that," said Alex, taking the seat opposite Albrek, "though I know adventurers can name anyone they wish as the heir to their bag." "Yes, that's true," said Albrek with a smile. "Hamar doesn't believe that, of course, but as you say, adventurers can name anyone they want to. My father named me his heir, and so I must insist that the bag be returned to me." "But your father did not name you as his heir," corrected Alex. "The bagmaker in Tellus listed Hamar's name. Your father might have told you he was going to change this, but he never did." "He may not have had time," said Albrek quickly. "He told me before he left on his last adventure that I would be his heir once he returned home." "Though he never returned home, did he?" Alex said thoughtfully. Alex's thoughts turned to Hathnord, the owner of the bag and the father of both Hamar and Albrek. Hamar had said little about his father, though he had shown concern regarding his father's health and age. Albrek didn't seem concerned about his father at all, only about the magic bag and his own claim as Hathnord's heir. Alex thought it was an important point, and one that made him favor Hamar's claim even more. "No, he did not return home, and it appears that he never bothered to change the named heir of the bag with the bagmaker," Albrek went on, not noticing the tone in Alex's voice. "Still, my claim is just, and I'm willing to pay for my rights." Pay?" Alex questioned. "Of course," said Albrek. "What's in the bag is nothing compared to the honor of being named the heir. I'm sure Hamar made you a generous offer to return the bag to him, but whatever he's offering you, I'll give you more." "The subject of reward for the bag's return is part of the returning ceremony," said Alex flatly. "Hamar and I did not discuss it at all." "No, of course not," said Albrek, a twisted smile on his face. "And I'm sure that we won't discuss it either. Though I might suggest something along the lines of, 1/2 of all the bag contains." "As I said, such things should not be discussed now," said Alex. The more Albrek talked, the more Alex disliked him, and after this conversation he was sure that Hamar was the true heir. "Ah, yes, of course," said Albrek with a wink. "I suppose you know the passwords to your father's bag?" Alex asked, getting to his feet. He tried not to let his feelings of anger show. "I'm sure I will when the time comes," answered Albrek, winking at Alex again. "As long as Hamar goes first, I'm sure there won't be any trouble with passwords." "I'm sure there won't," said Alex coldly. "Well then, if we understand each other, I'll be on my way," said Albrek happily. "Oh, yes, I understand you perfectly," said Alex, fighting to control the rage building up inside of him. Albrek stood and held out his hand again for Alex to shake, but Alex turned away, walking toward the fountain. "I will send word about the ceremony," said Alex over his shoulder, not wanting to look at Albrek. He was afraid his feelings would make him do something terrible to the lying dwarf. Yes, of course," said Albrek, and he quickly departed. Alex stared into the fountain for several minutes, trying to control his emotions. Albrek had no claim at all. He only wanted to steal Hamar's honor and whatever treasure he could. Worse than that, he thought he could bribe Alex into helping him, and that was a dishonor Alex would never allow. For a moment, Alex considered changing Albrek into something terrible as punishment for his attempted bribe, but then decided that exposing Albrek for what he was would be a more suitable punishment. "So, you've spoken to both of them now. What do you think?" Thrang asked when Alex returned to the house for the midday meal. "I know who the true heir is," said Alex without explaining. "How soon can the ceremony be arranged? I'd like to announce my decision and return the bag at the same time." "I'll have to talk to Hamar and Albrek to see how soon they can be ready," said Thraxon. "Though I doubt the two of them will agree to the decision of who the true heir is and the ceremony of the bag's return at the same time." "Well then, tell them that is the only way the bag will be returned," said Alex with a smile. "They should both be there for the decision, as well as to witness the bag's return to the true heir." "Ah, it will be as you wish," said Thorson with an understanding smile. As it worked out, it took 2 days to prepare for the ceremony. Hamar and Albrek argued about how many people should attend the ceremony and who those people should be. Then they argued about where the ceremony should take place, and even what time of day it should begin. In the end, Thorson made most of the arrangements and decided most of the questions about who should be there. The only 2 things Alex insisted on were that some of the guests in attendance not be related to either Hamar or Albrek, and that all of his companions be included as guests. He also suggested that Thrang's nephew, Fyvra, should be there. "It might enlighten him a little," said Alex. "After all, a lost bag means a lost adventurer. Something I'm sure Fyvra has not considered in his thinking." "Ah, yes," said Thrang with a nod. "A cunning plan to show him the hard facts about adventures without saying anything. Very good, Alex. Very good." As they waited for the ceremony to begin, all of Alex's companions seemed to be getting nervous. They were interested to know what decision he had made, but Alex wouldn't tell them. He thought it best not to say anything until the day of the ceremony, mostly because he wanted to see how Hamar and Albrek would act between now and then. "Albrek seems confident," Thorson observed as Alex and his friends made their way into the feasting hall on the day of the ceremony. "There are some rumors in the city that he will be named the true heir." "Rumors that Albrek started, no doubt," said Thrang, looking unhappy. "Loose talk seldom holds truth," Archon said, taking a seat next to Alex. "You have discovered who the true heir is, haven't you?" Thrain questioned in a worried tone. "Yes, I have," said Alex with a slight smile. Once all the guests had arrived, Thorson stood up to address the crowd. Since Thorson had made most of the arrangements, he had been chosen to supervise both the decision about who the true heir was and the ceremony of returning the lost bag. After several minutes of greetings and a quick explanation of the events for the dwarfs who didn't already know what was going on, Thorson introduced Thrang and his company, and then he called both Hamar and Albrek forward. "Master Taylor, if you will," said Thorson, bowing to Alex. "I've been asked to judge who the true heir of Hathnord is," Alex began, standing between Hamar and Albrek. "It was not a simple task, but I know who the true heir is, and who I will be returning the lost bag of Hathnord to." Alex paused for a moment to look at both Hamar and Albrek. Hamar looked a little nervous, but stood firmly in his place. Albrek looked pleased with himself and was bouncing up and down on the balls of his feet. "The true heir of Hathnord is Hamar Glynn," said Alex in a loud, clear voice. "His claim on the bag is recognized, and I offer to return his father's lost bag to him." "No!" cried Albrek, his smile gone and his face growing red with anger. "We had an agreement. You were supposed to name me the rightful heir." "You had an agreement," Alex corrected. "I agreed to nothing. You admitted to me that you did not know the passwords to your father's bag. Worse, you tried to bribe me into naming you as Hathnord's heir." "I never said I didn't know the passwords," said Albrek angrily. "And I would never think of offering a bribe for something that is rightfully mine." "I was asked to decide who this bag belongs to, and I have," said Alex firmly. "If you know the passwords as you claim you do, tell me now." Well, we agreed that—" Albrek stuttered. "You are a fool, Albrek Glynn," said Alex coldly. "You have tried to cheat your brother out of his rights and honors, and worse, you have tried to bribe a wizard. Admit what you've done, or spend the rest of your life trying to hide it." "There's nothing to admit," Albrek shouted. "You've made a mistake, but I suppose there's nothing I can do about that. Serves me right for putting my faith in such a young wizard, but what's done is done." "Albrek, please, tell the truth," said Hamar, a look of concern on his face. "You should talk about truth," Albrek spat back. "It's obvious to me that you're the one who's done the bribing around here. You've cheated me out of my inheritance, just as you've tried to cheat me out of everything else." "You cheat yourself," said Alex calmly. "You will take back what you've said about bribes, or I may take offense." "Take what offense you like," Albrek sneered. "You've taken my honor this day, so offending you is of little concern to me." "Forgive him, Master Taylor," Hamar pleaded. He doesn't know what he's saying." "Because of the day, and because Hamar asks it, I will take no action against Albrek for his insults," said Alex, fixing Albrek with a glare. "However, if you ever even suggest that I would accept a bribe again, I will track you down and claim my revenge on you. And I promise you, Albrek Glynn, that my revenge will be far worse than the loss of honor you've suffered this day." Albrek paled. He seemed to be frozen in place. Once Alex had finished speaking, Albrek tried to say something, but no words came out of his mouth. His face twisted with rage and fear. "Go now," Alex commanded. "You have no place among these honorable people." Albrek turned and rushed out of the room. Alex and Hamar watched him go, as did everyone else in the hall. The guests looked stunned and surprised, and everything was quiet until Thraxon spoke once more. "Well, let the ceremony of returning the lost bag begin," said Thraxon nervously. With Thraxon's words, the tension was broken, and the dwarfs in the hall began to whisper. Thraxon moved to where Alex and Hamar were still standing, and, speaking over the whispers, he started the ceremony. Hamar managed a weak smile and offered Alex one half of all that the bag contained. Alex thought Hamar was being overly generous and, in the end, accepted only 1/3 of the treasure in Hathnord's bag. He would have asked for less, but he knew only too well that asking for too little would be an insult to Hamar. With the bag returned to the rightful heir, the feast began and the noise in the room increased. Alex returned to his seat next to his friends. Thraxon was upset about Albrek's outburst and his insults to Alex, and he insisted that Albrek be punished in some way. "I think he will be punished enough," said Alex. "Everyone here knows what he has done, and the news will spread through Khazad-Sin quickly." "Still, he has insulted you," said Thraxon. "Something more than public shame is called for." "He will make his own punishment," said Alex. "Everyone in the city will know what he's done, though I think he will continue to deny it. Yet the more he denies the truth, the easier it will be for others to see what he truly is." Thraxon didn't respond, but it was clear that he thought some other punishment should be given to Albrek. The feast, however, was very good, and soon the conversation turned from punishment to more pleasant topics. It took several days for Alex's payment to be arranged. Hathnord had been on many adventures and had collected a huge amount of treasure. Alex didn't mind waiting because Khazad-Sin was a wonderful city to be in, and he spent his days meeting people and wandering the streets. Thraxon took great pleasure in introducing Alex and his companions to all of his friends, and every night there was another feast to attend. It seemed that after the return of the lost adventurer's bag, most of the city knew who Alex was, and all of them greeted him wherever he went. After a few days, Thraxon began talking about leaving Khazad-Sin to continue their quest, but Alex reminded him that they still needed a place to sort and divide the treasure they had collected on the Isle of Bones. Thraxon asked Thraxon if he had a place large enough to put the treasure. "We won't be in the city long enough to sort and divide it all," Thraxon told Thraxon. "Still, it would be good to make a start." "You can use the lower chambers," said Thraxon. "They have been empty for some time, and if you like, you can leave the treasure here, and I'll have some of our cousins do the sorting for you." "That would save time," said Thraxon. "If the rest of the company agrees, we'll leave the treasure here to be sorted and divided." That night at dinner, Thraxon asked the rest of the company what they thought about his plan, and they were all in favor of leaving the treasure with Thraxon. Thraxon was pleased by their willingness to trust his family with so much treasure, and he accepted Thraxon's offer at once. Thraxon thanked them all for their trust, rising from his seat and bowing several times to the company. "Well, with that settled, I have some other news for you," said Thraxon, his smile changing to a serious look as he returned to his chair. "I've learned a few things about the Lost Mountains, though I'm not too happy about what I found." "Trouble?" Thraxon questioned quickly. "Possibly," said Thraxon. "You should know that there are a few dwarf villages in the mountains, mostly on the western edges. There might even be a few cities, but I can't confirm that. The dwarfs who live in the Lost Mountains seem to be prosperous, though they try to hide that fact as much as possible." "Don't want thousands of dwarfs rushing in on them, most likely," said Thraxon. "True, that would explain their secrecy," Thraxon allowed. "Still, there are rumors of trouble. Nothing solid, of course, just rumors.
What kind of trouble? Archon asked, leaning back in his chair.
Rumors about an ancient evil reborn,
said Thraxon, as he nervously looked around at his guests.
An evil that is killing people, and the dwarfs in the villages seem unable to stop it.
An ancient evil? Alex prompted, seeing Thraxon's hesitation.
The stories say there are packs of wolf-like creatures in the area, said
Thraxon, glancing quickly at Thrang.
Vicious creatures that show no fear. Wolf-like creatures,
Thrang repeated, stroking his beard.
Are you saying what I think you're saying? They're rumors, and, mind you, these are just rumors. They sound like the Hellerash,
said Thraxon, his eyes dropping to his plate. Alex quickly glanced around the table at his friends, but it was obvious that none of them had the slightest idea what a Hellerash was either. Whatever they were, both Thraxon and Thrang were afraid of them.
It can't be,
said Thrang, a stunned expression on his face.
There hasn't been a Hellerash seen in almost 1,000 years. Yes, well, they are only rumors, said Thraxon hopefully. I've had a hard time getting any information about the Lost Mountains, and it's possible this rumor was started by the dwarfs in the area. To keep others away. Yes, that must be what it is,
said Thrang, looking only slightly happier.
What in the world is a Hellerash?
Nellis asked, voicing the question they all wanted answered.
The Hellerash were vicious creatures, like giant wolves, said Thrang slowly. They killed just for the sake of killing, and they almost always travelled in packs. The dwarfs used to hunt them down and kill them, Thraxon added. They were dangerous and clever creatures, so never fewer than 30 dwarfs would go in a hunting party. But the last Hellerash was killed almost 1,000 years ago,
said Thrang, more to himself than the others.
Then perhaps this is just a rumor, said Barnabas.
Yes, it must be, said
Thrang, shaking off the fearful look that had been on his face.
These rumors must be false, but we will stay alert along the road just in case.
A wise plan, Archon said, considering what happened the last time we heard rumors of trouble. Chapter 16. The Hellerash. The days before Alex and his friends left the city were spent depositing the treasure from the Isle of Bones in the lower chambers of Thraxon's home and sorting as much of it as they could. Thraxon was amazed by the amount of treasure they had, and he worried that the lower chambers would not be large enough to hold it all.
Well, brother, I can see you're far richer than you've let any of us know, said Thraxon, smiling at Thrang. Yes, well, I've had a great deal of luck, said Thrang. Been on some good adventures with some good people, and Master Taylor here has added a great deal to my wealth. Yes, never hurts to have a wizard along on an adventure, Thraxon laughed. That's what our grandfather always said, and I can see he was right.
It may not hurt to have a wizard, but it's better to go with good people, said Alex.
I'd remind Thrang on our first adventure together that I was not a wizard, and yet we managed to collect a fair amount of treasure on that trip. Perhaps not a wizard in name, said Thrang with a sly smile. Still, you're correct in saying that it's better to go with good people.
With their treasure safely stored, Thrang was ready for the company to move on. Thraxon seemed a little worried about the time of year, reminding Thrang that winter was coming.
We should have a month or so of fair weather before winter arrives, said Thrang thoughtfully. Plus, we'll be moving south, so winter won't catch up to us too quickly. And with luck, you'll reach a village in the Lost Mountains before snow comes, Thraxon added. Still, I wouldn't mind having you all spend the winter here. Ho, but you might mind before spring came again, Thrang laughed. No, we'll move on in the morning, and return quickly after we find success.
That night's feast was a grand one, even compared to all the feasts they'd already been to. Alex suspected Thraxon had been preparing it for several days, and the preparation showed. Most of Thrang's family was there, along with several other important dwarfs from the city. All of them wished the company good luck and a quick return to Khazad-Sin once they'd completed their quest. The party went late and would have gone on all night if Thrang had not put an end to it.
We have a long road ahead of us still, and if we sit here much longer, we won't be away before midday, Thrang said. I'll thank you all for my companions and myself, and wish you each a pleasant good night."
It still took some time for Alex and his companions to make their way back to their rooms. Alex was sad to be leaving Cosset Sin, but at the same time he was happy to be moving on. They still had a long way to go on their adventure, and unless he was mistaken, there would be time for dinner parties when they returned from their journey. Alex was preparing to climb into his bed when a small popping noise and a loud ding announced the arrival of a geeb. He was only slightly surprised to find that the geeb had a message from Waylon. He'd been expecting and hoping for one for quite some time. The letter read, "Dear Alex, I apologize for the delay in getting back to you, but I've been busy with several other matters. I would point out that you haven't been sending nearly as many messages as you should. But as I haven't been sending any at all, let's start over, and this time I promise to keep up with you. Looking back over your messages, I see you've met Bane. He's an interesting fellow, with an even more interesting story. I'm happy to hear that the two of you have become friends. I'd hate to have to clean up the mess if the two of you were enemies. I'd like to talk about Bane and his suspicions of a conspiracy in the known lands the next time we meet. Nice work with the Nagus. I've run into a few of them in my travels, and I know how quickly they can move and how deadly they are. It's lucky you have some good people around you. Now, on to more important things. The dragon on the Isle of Bones is of great interest both to myself and the council. It is a pity that you had to hide the island from everyone, though I suppose the dragon asked for that, and I can't say that I blame him. And you're a dragon lord now, which is something very special. There hasn't been a true dragon lord for at least 2,000 years, and even I don't know all the details of the title. The council is hoping you will come to our next meeting. The date and location aren't set yet, because we don't know when everyone will be available to attend. Keep me posted on what's happening, and I'll try harder to write to you on a regular basis. I'm sorry to say I don't know why you are having reckless feelings. Perhaps it is your age. As long as you are able to control the urge to be reckless, I wouldn't worry. I'll remind you again, though, as I've done so often in the past. Don't let your anger get the best of you. Never act out of rage alone, as something really terrible might happen. Enough said. Yours in fellowship, Waylon. P.S. If you want to know more about your family, I would suggest you talk to Mr. Clutter. He should have the records on your father, and he might know something of your mother as well." Alex read the letter twice, then smiled and put it in his bag. It seemed like it had been a long time since he'd heard from Waylon. He knew he hadn't been sending as many messages as he should have, and he promised himself that he would make time to send at least one message every 2 or 3 weeks from now on. Alex was surprised by the Council of Wizards' invitation for him to attend their next meeting. The only wizard Alex knew was Waylon, and while he did want to meet others, he was a little nervous about meeting the entire council at one time. He was still young, and even though he'd already done some impressive things, he wasn't sure the other wizards would take him seriously. After all, they were all much older than he was, and had a great deal more experience. In the end, Alex decided not to worry about meeting the Council of Wizards. He would have time to worry if and when the meeting came. He moved on to Waylon's comments about his reckless feelings. Alex knew where those feelings were coming from now, even if he wasn't completely comfortable with the answer. He would have to tell Waylon what Salanor had said, but maybe he would wait until he could talk about it with Waylon face to face. With that final thought, Alex dropped into his comfortable bed and quickly fell asleep. The next morning was gray and windy, and it looked almost certain to rain before the day was over. Thrang's mood darkened with the change in weather, but he remained determined to get back on the road.
"A gloomy day to part on," Thorson said as he stood beside Thrang. "I wish you all a safe journey, and promise a great welcome when you return." "You've been most generous to us," said Thrang, bowing to his brother. "We will not forget your kindness." Oh, stop it," said Thorson. "I know very well that your adventurer's code demands that you say such things, but it means little here. You are family, and you and your friends will always be welcome." "You're most kind, my brother," said Thrang. "I hope you will return soon to take advantage of your kindness."
Thorson laughed, then he and Thrang embraced. Alex and the others bowed and thanked Thorson as they moved toward their horses. Thorson waved off their thanks, though he looked pleased just the same. They all mounted their horses, except for Thrain.
Thrain, are you coming with us?
Thrain questioned loudly.
Yes, I'm coming,
said Thrain, hurrying to climb onto his own horse.
Where did you run off to?
Thrain questioned, a knowing smile on his face.
I wanted to say goodbye to Dane,
said Thrain in an apologetic tone.
I didn't get a chance to last night, and I thought it would be rude not to. And Fivra?
Thrain questioned.
Well, yes, Fivra was there as well,
said Thrain, his face turning bright red.
Plotting with my own family, I see,
said Thrain with a laugh.
So has Fivra agreed to wait for your return before going to Valgland?
Oh, well, Thrain stammered, clearly surprised that Thrain had guessed the truth.
Yes, he said he would wait until I could go with him. That may be a long time, Thorson said. After all, you have this adventure to finish before you can go anywhere. Yes, well, I did say I'd try to come back, said Thrain. Or I thought maybe Fivra could come to Benog once our adventure is done.
At least Thrain was able to talk Fivra into waiting, Archon pointed out. I don't think any of us could have done that.
Yes, I suppose that's true, said Thrain with a laugh. But I think I would keep a closer eye on our young friend just the same. Until you return, my friends, said Thorson, and perhaps Fivra will indeed be able to go to Benog when you return. Farewell, my brother, Thrain said. Keep an eye on the youngsters. They seem to be plotting together.
Thorson laughed and waved to them all as Thrain led the company through the gates, away from Thorson's house and into the city. It appeared, however, that the people of the city were unwilling to let them leave without wishing them good luck once again. The streets of Khazad Sin were crowded, and all along the way, dwarves were cheering them on and wishing them a safe journey. You are well thought of by the people of this city, Archon said as he rode beside Thrain. They honor you greatly by this display.
Their wishes are for all of us,
said Thrain, smiling and waving to some friends as he spoke. Yet I doubt we would receive such a send-off if you were not our leader, said Cat. Soon they left the cheering crowds behind, and the city became a small green spot on the road behind them. Thrain's good spirits did not falter, however, even when a soft rain began falling after their midday meal.
Winter moves south quickly, said Barnabas. I am glad we are going south and not north.
Oh, this rain is hardly winter,
Thrain said with a laugh.
Though I confess I also am glad to be moving south. Winter is hard in the north, and travel is almost impossible.
How long will it take us to reach the Lost Mountains? Alex questioned.
2, maybe 3 weeks, said Thrain. They are south and a little east of us, but the people Thorson spoke to in Khazad Sin said the road is good. If we stay on the main road, we shouldn't have any trouble.
That's what we thought of when we left Benog, said Nellis with a grin. And there is the rumor of the Hellrash, Thrain added.
That's just a rumor,
said Thrain, looking a little uneasy.
I doubt we will see anything.
Some creatures grow strong when rumors remain rumors, said Cat, her voice so low that only Alex heard her. As they made camp for the night, the rain stopped and the clouds slowly broke apart and drifted away. Alex glanced up at the thousands of stars in the sky, letting his mind wander freely. It was a pleasant evening, yet something in Alex's mind made him nervous. He glanced around the campsite, wondering if something was watching them, but he could see nothing. You felt something, Cat said, moving up beside him. It was not a question. A nervous feeling, nothing more, said Alex. I felt it too, said Cat, a look of concentration on her face. There is nothing there now, only the empty land. Perhaps that is why I'm nervous, said Alex, laughing softly. Too many dangers, said Cat. What do you mean? You've faced too many dangers for one so young. Now you feel nervous when there are no dangers to face. Perhaps, Alex agreed, though I'm not in any rush to look for danger. Danger seems to find you, Cat answered with a smile. I find that strange, but I am at a loss to explain it. Don't be troubled by it, said Alex, turning back to the campfire. Cat remained at the edge of the camp for a few minutes, and then returned to the campfire as well. The days passed, and the weather seemed to change with each new day. Some days were warm and dry, others wet, and still others windy. Alex and his friends were not troubled by the weather, but they were starting to feel strangely nervous as they moved south. Nellis and Barnabas both tried to lighten the mood with jokes and songs, but were not always successful. Alex felt watchful, and he noticed that both Cat and Archon would often stand and stare into the darkness around their camp at night. On the 8th day away from Khazad-Sin, they camped beside a small stream, eating in silence as rain poured down on them. The campfire popped and sizzled in the rain, but because Alex had conjured it up with magic, it would not go out.
"Winter is moving south fast,"
Thraxon said, looking at the dark sky.
"But we should still reach shelter in the Lost Mountains before the weather gets too bad."
They finished their meals and hurried off to their dry tents. Alex let the conjured fire burn, though he had some misgivings about such a bright light on such a dark night. Archon remained at the fire during Alex's watch, and Alex had the feeling that the elf was listening for something that he could not hear over the noise of the falling rain. The next morning the rain had stopped, but the uneasy feelings had grown stronger. They were darker than the uneasy feelings they had experienced on the Isle of Bones. As they were eating their breakfast, Archon wandered down to the stream, and then quickly returned with a troubled look on his face. "What is it?" Cat questioned, setting aside her plate. Alex jumped to his feet, looking round the campsite as if expecting a sudden attack. "Just tracks in the mud," said Archon, trying to sound calm.
"Tracks?"
Thraxon questioned.
"What kind of tracks?"
"They are difficult to read," said Archon. "I have never seen anything like them before, though they look something like wolf tracks."
"Wolf tracks?"
Thraxon questioned.
"There aren't any wolves this far south in Thraxon."
"Show me as a Thrax," said Nellis as he got to his feet. "I've tracked many creatures in the past, and may be able to make some sense of them." Archon led Nellis and the rest of the company back to the stream and pointed out the large tracks. They were all on the far bank, though none of them had come within 5 feet of the water. "They do look a little like wolf tracks, but they are too large," Nellis said. "That's what I thought," said Archon, looking quickly at Thraxon and then back to the tracks.
"Hellarash,"
Thraxon whispered.
"Those are Hellarash tracks."
"What?" Barnabas asked, turning to look at Thraxon. "I thought the Hellarash were vicious," said Thraxon softly. "If they're as vicious as the stories say, and I heard a lot of stories in Khazad-Sin, then why didn't it cross the stream and attack our camp?"
"Who can say?"
answered Thraxon, looking a little pale.
"Perhaps this is the boundary to their territory, or perhaps they were afraid of the light from Alex's conjured fire."
"Or perhaps it was a single Hellarash, and it has gone to get others," Cat said darkly.
"Perhaps,"
Thraxon allowed.
"Whatever the reason, we should all remain extra alert from now on. We should also have a double watch at night, just in case."
"A wise precaution," said Archon. "And I think we should keep the horses closer to our tents as well."
"Yes, that is a good idea,"
Thraxon agreed quickly, leading the company back toward the camp. The journey that day was slow, and everyone kept glancing around them as they traveled, looking for any sign of movement. They saw nothing that day, and by the time they made camp for the night, Alex's troubled feelings were beginning to subside. Thraxon, however, seemed more nervous than ever, and he asked Alex to conjure up a fire that would burn brightly all night. When they started off again the next morning, most of their fears had slipped away. They had heard nothing during the night, and there were no signs of tracks anywhere near their camp. Archon and Alex had both walked a wide circle around the camp just to make sure. Thraxon seemed relieved, but he still made sure that Archon and Cat had their bows ready, and that Thraxon had his crossbow loaded.
"Better safe than sorry,"
said Thraxon with a weak smile as they started off. Alex thought it unlikely that they would see anything along the road, but he kept his staff ready. They continued riding south, and the afternoon sun and the warm, damp air made Alex feel slightly sleepy. He was jolted awake by the sound of Archon's and Cat's bowstrings snapping at the same moment, followed quickly by the high-pitched spring of Thraxon's crossbow. Neither of those sounds shook him as much as the terrible cry that followed. It was an almost human cry, of agony and despair, a cry that forced his eyes toward the creature that made it. 30 yards to the right of the road, a huge, black, wolf-like creature crouched with arrows sticking out of its shiny black hide. Alex could see the bones of the creature's ribcage. It bit madly at the shaft of Archon's arrow, Cat's arrow had hit the creature higher in the neck, but it couldn't get its head around to bite at that one. Then it turned and ran, darting between some large rocks, the shaft of Archon's arrow snapping off as it ran. The Hellarash was fast, vanishing from view before Archon could fit a second arrow to his bow. "That shot should have killed it," Archon said, turning his horse toward the Hellarash's trail. "If not mine, then Cat's for sure." I'm sure my bolt hit it as well," said Thrain, following quickly.
"I saw no wound from the bolt,"
said Thrain gruffly. "It seemed pained, but uninjured from the arrows," Nellis added. Archon dismounted and bent to pick up the broken shaft of his arrow. Thrain moved about the rocks, looking for the bolt he had let fly. As Archon walked back toward the group, he looked troubled, almost afraid. "No blood," Archon said, holding the broken arrow out for Thrain. "There is no blood on the shaft."
"Well, it broke away from the wound,"
said Thrain, glancing at the arrow. "There is no blood on the rocks or grass either," Archon added. "And there's no blood on my bolt," Thrain said, coming up beside Archon and holding out the bolt he'd recovered.
"You may have missed it completely," said Thrain in a dismissive tone.
"Oh, I didn't miss," Thrain insisted defiantly. "Thrain is correct," Archon broke in. "I saw the bolt pass through what should have been the creature's stomach. I would not have expected it to pass clear through, but it seems to have done so."
"What are you saying?"
Thrain questioned, his pale face growing hard. "Isn't it clear?" said Cat, causing all of them to jump.
"No, it's not clear at all,"
said Thrain, looking as if he didn't want to hear anything Cat had to say. "That creature was not a true Hellarash," Cat said flatly. "It has no blood and no life in it."
"Impossible,"
said Thrain weakly. "But that can mean only one thing," said Archon, glancing at his arrow and then turning to look at Alex. "Necromancer," said Alex, a chill running down his back as he said the word.
No, it can't,"
Thrain began and trailed off. "It's the only explanation," said Alex. "It's the only thing that could call a long-dead Hellarash back to life, or at least to a half-life." Alex felt his friends staring at him, but their confused and frightened looks did not trouble him as much as the next words he had to say. "I must face him," said Alex, looking down at his saddle. "No, it is too dangerous," Cat broke in.
"We will find another path to the south,"
Thrain said quickly. "You do not understand," said Alex, holding up his hand. "As a true wizard, I must seek out this evil and try to destroy it."
"I forbid it," said Thrain forcefully. "You are part of this company, and I am the leader. You will not seek out this danger that has nothing to do with our quest."
"I know you speak from friendship, Thrain, but I have no choice," said Alex. "My vow as a wizard is more binding than our agreement, and if I must, I will break the adventurer's bargain and go on alone." "Not alone," said Archon quickly. "Thank you, my friend, but you cannot break the bargain without losing honor," said Alex. "I would not allow you to leave the company in any event, as they will need you more than ever once I leave."
"Archon is right," said Thrain forcefully. "If you must seek out this evil, then you will not do it alone. Even if our adventure fails completely, I will not leave you to face this evil by yourself."
"Then we continue south," said Alex, grateful for Thrain's words.
"Yes, we continue south," Thrain repeated, "and may evil fear our approach."
The rest of the company cheered Thrain's words, and Alex couldn't help but feel grateful to his friends. He was worried, however, because he knew, perhaps better than any of them, the danger that a necromancer presented. He also knew that, in the end, he would have to face the necromancer alone. That meeting would be incredibly dangerous, not just for him, but for all of Thraxon as well. They continued south along the road, moving as quickly as they could and looking for a safe place to make their camp. As the sun dropped in the west, Thrain called them to a halt and moved them a short distance off the main road. A series of large boulders formed a horseshoe shape, the center of which provided the perfect campsite. "A good spot," Nellis observed. "The creatures can come at us from only one direction." "They might jump down from the rocks behind us," said Thrain in a worried tone.
"And they might bar our path from leaving," Thrain added nervously. "Still, it seems the best place we'll find today, so we might as well make camp."
There was little talk and no joking or stories around the campfire that night. They were all tense, and even the slightest sound from outside their camp was enough to draw all of their eyes. When Thrang and the others went to their tents, leaving Alex and Archon on watch, Alex took his writing things out of his magic bag. He needed to let Waylon know about this latest development. "You are sending word to Master Vanken?" Archon said. "Yes," said Alex, looking up at his friend. "He knows a great deal, and may be able to advise you on dealing with this evil," said Archon, his eyes fixed on the campfire. "Though, I confess, I am concerned about you meeting a necromancer." "So am I. But there's nothing that can be done about it," Alex answered, folding the letter he'd been working on. "I am here, so I must face this test." "And if you fail?" Archon questioned, a pained look on his face. "I will not allow myself to be used by this evil," Alex said forcefully, guessing at Archon's greatest fear. "I will summon the dragon to destroy me before I become the puppet of a necromancer." "I hope it will not come to that," Archon replied softly, glancing at Alex. "So do I," said Alex with a weak smile. "So do I." There was no sign of the Hellarash that night, and they saw no tracks or signs of the creature for the next few days. Alex could tell that the others were beginning to hope they had left the Hellarash behind them. Thrang even voiced the hope that there was no necromancer, and that the company could continue on their quest without any trouble. Alex, however, knew there was a necromancer. Ever since he'd seen the Hellarash, he had felt the presence of evil. Worse, Alex knew the necromancer was aware of him as well.
"We should reach the Lost Mountains in a day or two,"
Thraxon said as they were breaking camp one morning.
"Then perhaps we can get some news of Albrek and his people."
"I doubt it will be that easy," Cat commented in a low tone.
"Oh, the dwarfs of the Lost Mountains should be friendly enough,"
Thraxon went on, trying to avoid the point Cat was trying to make. The others did not comment because they were all thinking of the Hellarash, even though none of them would say so. "You sense the presence of the necromancer," Alex said quietly to Cat as they started off. "Yes," said Cat, looking pale and tired. "I fear that I will be overcome if you fail." "Then I must not fail," said Alex, forcing a smile. The morning was sunny and warm, but by midday dark clouds rolled across the sky, and the smell of rain filled the air. Thrang urged them forward, hoping to find a dwarf city or village for them to spend the night in. As darkness began to grow around them, Alex noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. For a moment, he wasn't sure he'd seen anything at all, but he knew that he had. "Yes," Archon said, noticing Alex's look. "I see them too."
"What's that?"
Thrang questioned, taking his attention off the road ahead. "Several of the Hellarash," said Archon. "They have been circling us for the last hour." "As long as they keep their distance," Nellis said, looking over his shoulder. "They won't attack until it's dark," said Cat. "They will want as much cover as possible before coming at us."
"Then we should hurry," said Thrang in a worried tone. "We may arrive at a village soon, and any dwarfs we find will be sure to help us against these creatures."
Alex had his doubts. If they had been close to a dwarf city or village, the Hellarash would not be circling them now. Even as he considered their chances against the evil creatures, he saw that the Hellarash were getting closer to them. "There," said Archon, pointing to a large hill to the left of the road. "If we can reach the top, we can make our defense there."
"Yes," Thrang agreed quickly. "It will be better than meeting them in the open. Quickly now, to the hilltop."
Thrang spurred his horse forward, and the others followed him. At first, the horses seemed reluctant to run toward the hill, but when a sudden piercing howl rose from behind them, the horses all shuddered and dashed forward. Alex knew that the howl had been a signal, a call to the attack, and he could feel Cherie trembling beneath him. "Easy, girl," Alex said softly to his horse. "We have faced greater dangers before." Cherie seemed to calm down, but only slightly as she raced forward. Alex could sense her desperation to reach the safety of the hilltop before the Hellarash could attack. The landscape became a blur, and the company was spreading out. Cat's horse was not as swift as the others, and she was falling behind and fast. Alex slowed Cherie, unwilling to leave Cat, but the others rushed on. It looked as if they had completely lost control of their horses and were struggling just to hold on. It happened suddenly, but to Alex it seemed that everything was moving in slow motion. A scream and a horse's terrified whinny came from behind him, and without thinking, he reined in Cherie, turning her back the way he had come. Cherie stamped her hooves impatiently, but he held her on the spot for a moment and then spurred her forward, back across the ground they had just crossed. Cat struggled to get to her feet. Her horse lay on the ground 10 feet behind her. Alex saw the black shapes of several Hellarash tearing at the fallen horse, and a flame of rage began to burn deep inside him. As quickly as Cherie could run, he charged forward, whispering magical words as he went. The end of his staff flared in the darkness, and a sudden ball of flame shot toward the dark shadows in front of him. A Hellarash burst into flame, and several others jumped away. He wanted to press his attack on the evil creatures, but Cat was on foot, dazed from her fall, and it was up to him to save her. "Leave me," Cat yelled as Alex rode up to her. "There is no time, and your horse cannot carry us both." "Come," Alex commanded, putting out his free hand and catching Cat's arm. With a single movement, he swung her up behind him and then let loose the reins, giving Cherie the freedom she demanded. "Run now, my friend, run like the wind!" Cherie leaped forward. Back into the darkness she raced, back toward the hill that stood so close and yet so far away. Alex could feel Cat clutching at him, trying desperately to hold on. He could feel Cherie struggling for more speed, but the added weight on her back was slowing her down. Desperate to give them more time, Alex raised his staff over his head, its burning light driving back the darkness, and, he hoped, the Hellarash as well. As they reached the bottom of the hill, Cherie stumbled, and Alex felt himself lifting off the saddle. Cat tried to grab hold of him, but it was no good. Together, Alex and Cat flew helplessly through the air, and as Alex's staff went spinning out of his hand, its light went out. Fighting to get to his feet and drag Cat up with him, Alex blurted out the summoning spell to call his staff back to his hand. He had barely managed to relight his staff when his eyes met the evil yellow-green eyes of the advancing Hellarash. His voice seemed to leave him, and all he could do was stare. The Hellarash was moving fast, charging down on him before he could do anything to defend himself. For a moment, Alex thought his life was over, but then a silver-gray shadow blocked the Hellarash from his view. "No!" Alex screamed, realizing what had happened. There was the sickening sound of tearing flesh, followed by the sound of Cherie's body falling to the ground. The evil eyes of the Hellarash returned. The light from Alex's staff showed the bloody jaws of the Hellarash opened wide, as if it were laughing at him. Anger and sorrow rushed through Alex, blinding him to reason and thought. The Hellarash in front of him let loose its chilling howl, calling its companions to feast, and in that moment Alex's rage overcame everything else. The Hellarash standing next to Cherie burst into flame, dissolving almost instantly into ash. Alex brought his staff down forcefully, striking the ground and finishing the magic words at the same moment. For a few seconds the darkness vanished as a wall of bright blue-white flame grew up around Alex. The burning wall stood motionless for less than a second and then rushed outward in all directions. Cat cried out in fear, but Alex took no notice. As darkness reclaimed the night, Alex sank down to the ground, tears pouring down his face as he reached out to touch the neck of his lost friend. After some time, Alex became aware of the sounds around him. He could hear Cat whimpering behind him, and he could hear the rest of the company moving carefully down the hill toward them. He didn't want to explain what he'd done or why. He just wanted to be left alone. "Alex," Archon's concerned voice said softly. "Alex, are you all right?" "I'm fine," answered Alex, not turning to look at his friend. "Take care of Cat, and make camp. There is no danger now. I'll be along in a little while." Archon did not reply, but Alex could hear him helping Cat to her feet and moving away. He was grateful to Archon for leaving him alone and not insisting on answers or reasons. But sorrow filled his mind, and he had no place for other thoughts. Alex didn't know how long he sat there with Cherie's dead body. The spell he had used had taken a great deal of power out of him, and when he finally tried to get to his feet, his legs wobbled beneath him. Leaning on his staff, Alex looked down at Cherie. He wiped his face on his sleeve and slowly forced himself to cast another spell. The silver-gray horse faded into the ground like mist, and a large silver-gray stone rose out of the earth where she had been. 3 words written in golden letters appeared on the monument. Resting on his staff for another moment, Alex managed a weak smile, then turned away. Alex found the others easily, though he was not sure he wanted to answer questions even now. His sorrow had lessened, but the death of his horse was still clear in his mind, and the fact that she had willingly sacrificed herself to save him made her death harder to bear. Thrang and the others said nothing as Alex sat down beside the fire. He could feel them looking at him nervously. He was sure Cat had told them what had happened and what she had seen, but that would not explain everything. Alex had done something out of pure anger, and now he wondered if he had been right to do it.
"Something to eat?"
said Barnabas, holding out a bowl of stew for Alex. Alex accepted the bowl, but he did not eat. For several minutes he just looked at the stew, and then he spoke. "I destroyed them. All of them. Forever." "The wall of flame?" Archon asked. "Yes," said Alex. "It has moved across all of Thraxon and destroyed every Hellarash that's ever been."
"All of Thraxon?"
Thrang questioned nervously. "Yes," said Alex, setting his bowl down and putting his head in his hands. "Nowhere in all of this land does even a bone of a Hellarash remain." "A powerful spell," Cat said softly. "Perhaps too powerful," said Alex.
"How so?" Thrang asked. "Surely you don't feel sorry for destroying those evil creatures?"
"No, I don't feel sorry for that," said Alex, looking up. "But now I fear the necromancer will try to hide. He may no longer wish to face me. If that is the case, it may take me years to track him down."
"Will you,
Thrang began, but did not finish. "I will finish this quest, regardless of what the necromancer chooses to do," said Alex, answering Thrang's unasked question. "If he remains, I will face him. If he flees, I will pursue him, but after this adventure is over." The others remained silent, and Alex picked up his bowl. He didn't feel hungry, but he forced himself to eat anyway. He knew that he would need his strength, and he knew that he had to write to Waylon immediately. Chapter 17. The Cursed City. No one slept that night. When dawn finally came, they quietly collected their gear and prepared to resume their journey. "Where are your horses?" Alex questioned, noticing for the first time that none of his companions' horses were anywhere near the campsite.
"They broke away when we were trying to get up the hill,"
Thrang answered.
"Archon's horse carried him to the hilltop, but the rest ran."
"And even mine ran when the Hellarash closed in on us," Archon added. "How close did they get to you?" Alex asked.
"Oh, too close,"
said Nellis with a soft laugh.
"We were standing back to back on the hilltop," said Thrang. "The Hellarash were closing in slowly, looking for a weak spot, I guess."
"I'm sure they were about to charge us when the wall of flame appeared," said Barnabas. "If your spell had been a few seconds later, I doubt we would have survived."
"I shouldn't have left the group," said Alex bitterly.
"No harm was done," said Thrang, "and you saved Cat from those foul creatures."
Alex could tell that Thrang and the others wanted to hear about how he had rescued Cat and destroyed the Hellarash. He suspected Cat had told them what had happened while he remained with his fallen friend, but he knew they still had questions. He was grateful that none of them asked about it, and the conversation trailed off quickly. They moved down the hill toward the spot where Cherie had fallen, and a fresh wave of sorrow filled Alex. He noticed Cat glance at him as if she wanted to say something, but she quickly turned away.
"A fine monument,"
said Thrang when they reached the spot Alex had hoped to avoid.
"And never a truer statement has been carved."
"A true friend," Archon read from the stone. "Yes, I would say that is fitting." Cat made a strangled, sobbing sound and hid her face. Alex thought for a moment that he'd seen tears in her eyes, but he couldn't be sure. Turning away from the monument, he wished the hollow feeling inside him would go away. The pale morning light shined on the open land in front of them, but in several places Alex could see where the stones and grasses had been scorched black. "It appears that there were quite a few of them," Archon said, moving up beside Alex. "More than I would have guessed." "And now there are none," said Alex, starting off across the open ground without looking back. Archon's comment had not angered him, but Alex wasn't ready to think about what had happened. He wanted to forget about it for a time and move ahead with the business at hand. But he knew that he would not forget, and perhaps that made it harder for him to turn away from the monument and leave his fallen friend behind. His companions hurried after him, not saying anything more about the monument he'd created or the spell he'd cast. They fell into line behind Thraxon and Archon. Alex noticed that Cat kept her head turned away from him. At first he didn't know why, but then he realized that she blamed herself for Cherie's death. She felt that Cherie's death was her fault, and she feared that he would blame her for the loss of his friend. Alex's own sorrow melted away like ice, and he suddenly found himself concerned about Cat's worries. Cherie's death had not been Cat's fault, and Alex could not blame her even if he'd wanted to. She had told him to leave her behind. She had warned him that her weight would be too much for Cherie to carry. For one long, terrible moment, the images of Cherie's death rose once more before his eyes. If Alex had been a little quicker, or if he hadn't frozen when the Hellrash had charged him, then Cherie would not have had to sacrifice herself to save him. But Alex knew that he was not to blame either. The only person to blame was the necromancer, who had called the Hellrash back from the dead. It was the necromancer who had killed his friend, and it was the necromancer who would pay for that death. Alex wanted to say something to Cat, something to ease her troubled thoughts, but her sorrow seemed almost as deep as his own, and nothing he could think to say sounded right in his mind. "I don't blame you," Alex finally said softly. "I know," answered Cat, looking at him for the first time since the night before. "But I blame myself." "Don't," said Alex forcefully. "There is only one person responsible for what has happened, and he will answer for it, to me." "A dangerous attitude," said Cat in a lowered voice. "No, not really," said Alex, forcing a weak smile. "I do not wish to take his place or steal his power. I will simply call him to account for what he's done, as I must." "And if he is the stronger?" Cat questioned. "Necromancers are said to have a great deal of magical power." "Then he will go on," said Alex with a sigh. "Though I think my dragon friend might put an end to him if I were forced to summon him." "You are set in your course, then," Cat said flatly. "You will summon the dragon to destroy you before you let yourself be used by the necromancer." "Better to die once in flame than live forever in the half-life of the necromancer," said Alex. The words were not his own, and he was a little shaken by what he'd heard himself say. Cat gave him a puzzled look for several seconds before she turned away. As the day wore on, they began to look for any sign of a dwarf city, or possibly even a party of dwarfs on the road. The road, however, remained empty, and for all they could tell, there were no cities anywhere nearby. "Can you sense anything, Cat?" Thraxon asked as the afternoon was wearing away. "Anything at all?" "Sadness," Cat answered slowly. "There is great sorrow near, but I cannot see why." "Perhaps because of the Hellrash," Archon suggested, gazing across the land in front of them. "I'm sure any dwarfs in this area would have suffered from those creatures." "Yes, that would make sense," said Thraxon, looking at Cat, his expression clearly hoping for more information. "To the east of the road," said Cat, a pained look on her face. "East and south of us, at the base of the mountain, there is a city." "Are you certain?" Nellis questioned, looking from Cat to the southeast and back. "I see no signs that would indicate a city." "And you wouldn't," said Thraxon. "The dwarfs of the Lost Mountains are careful to hide themselves. We could walk right past the city and never see it if the dwarfs living there didn't want us to." "I doubt that," said Alex. "Well, perhaps not right past," Thraxon admitted. "In Vargland, many of the smaller cities are hard to find, even if you know what to look for," said Thraxon. "The same is true here," Thraxon added, "but we have several things in our favor. We have a seer who can lead us, a wizard who can sense things others cannot, and I know the ways that dwarves hide their cities here in Thraxon." "Then we should be able to find this city quickly," said Barnabas. "And I hope they have horses for sale. Oh, because Barnabas stopped quickly. For a moment they were all silent, and then Barnabas cleared his throat.
Forgive me, Alex. I did not think.
You have done no harm, said Alex, trying hard to smile. And I really don't want to walk all the way across Thraxon. As darkness gathered around them,